quick update on the Velocette tonight. I decided to fit the 12 volt coils that I bought for the other bike, and mainly because I've got them, and I think what I'll do is I will convert this bike to 12 volts, which doesn't actually mean too much. It means you need 12 volt bulbs, the horn will still work, it'll be louder actually on 12 volts, and you need a 12 volt battery. But the way I look at it is all of this can be undone. You could take it back to 6 volts pretty easily. I've got these coils. These cost, I think they're £130 from the UK plus postage. So I figure it's cheaper for me to use these and buy a 12 volt battery. And I don't really want to buy another set of these and just have one set sitting around not doing anything. It made sense to put them on here. I also replaced the contacts with my new ones. Initially I didn't do that. I just replaced the coils and the capacitor, which comes as part of the kit, and I still couldn't get it to work properly. I replaced the points with these new ones, and I managed to actually get it to pop even just as I was setting the points, the ignition timing. So the way I did that is I set this to top dead center, and then I turned the advance unit until the contacts opened, and you can see them spark. And the first time I did that, it actually popped. It fired just once. So fitting the new coils and the new contact breaker and the new capacitor, I have actually managed to get it to pop. So it's backfired as well a bit. It may actually just be that it is firing, because sometimes you pull the handle and it turns over really easily and it's just quiet. So I think it might actually be firing, and I'm just not really noticing. But I've definitely got more pops and bangs out of it. It is definitely igniting now. So I think that's what we're going to go with. I may end up shortening these high tension leads. I suppose I could just cable tie them up out of the way for now. I wasn't sure how these plug caps came undone. They're just screwed on. There's literally a screw in the end of it. You just screw the terminal onto the end of the wire. That's how that makes contact. Good thing is the oil pump is definitely working, because even just hand cranking it, you can get up to 10-15 pounds of oil. I think this is now in a good enough place to be able to run. So the next thing to do will be sort out the radiator. You can see I've already started making the stand. I did that in a weekend. And the hoses are very close. So these go in here on my new little water inlets, and they go up like that, and you can see there is not much clearance between the exhaust and these. I guess these have got water running through them, so that'll keep them cool, but I wonder if it's worth putting some sort of heat shielding between the two. I don't know, I'll look that up on the forum. Obviously I need to get a 12 volt motorcycle battery. I'm not sure I'll be able to get one that is going to be small enough to fit in this box. I don't think I will, but we'll see what I can find. And I still need to make the stand for the back wheel. You can see that one is just about to fall over. It's not in gear though, so it shouldn't go anywhere. So yeah, carb on, radiator on, but I think that looks good. The reason this confused me when I first got them, you'll notice these coils are actually marked 6 volt. That's because they're in series. So for a 12 volt system, you have 2 6 volt coils. For a 6 volt system, you end up with 2 3 volt coils. I did also look at getting locally a double-ended coil. So apparently the ones that were on, I think it was Yamaha Twins, would work, but they're not easy to find. I think the cheapest one I could find in New Zealand was about $100. So these coils cost me what, 200 and something, 300 New Zealand. I might as well use them. So I will have to remember to replace all of the bulbs. Like I say, the horn should be fine. And assuming the generator in this works, I don't even know if it does yet. The flywheel may have been demagnetized, who knows. But the generator will easily supply enough to charge the 12-volt battery. The battery actually acts almost as a ballast on the generator to hold the voltage down. This is why in vintage cars, same on the Riley, if the battery comes disconnected, you can end up blowing a bunch of stuff in the car because the dynamo output suddenly shoots up to 30-40 volts and it just fries everything. The only thing I do need to check is the diode in here, that thing. So you can actually fit a modern bridge rectifier. I think 35 amps, 600 volt, anything like that should work. But I may still be able to use that. Because I'm going to redo all of the wiring on this bike anyway, because it is in terrible state, I can wire it up as need be. Like I say, it's all reversible if I ever want to put it back to 6 volts. But yeah, I think it made sense just to use as many of the parts I'd already bought as possible. But I think that's going to work. I do find it quite tricky to set the points gap. You have to set it to 15 thou. I find that quite fiddly, so hopefully that's correct now. Today I'm just looking at fixing my bandsaw. So I basically filled this up with JB Weld, so it's all epoxied both sides. I think that might be strong enough. If it isn't, what I'll have to do is make a new piece for this out of a block of steel, I guess. But there's no harm trying this. We'll see if that's going to be strong enough to actually hold together. I will probably give this a quick vacuum and then try and reassemble it. And then we'll just have to test it and see. This has all gone back together and it seems to work. Just chopped a end off a block of wood. Other than that, all I can really do is just keep using it and see if that has actually fixed the problem. I'm interested to see how long that holds up. Hopefully for a while. I've been looking at the bike trying to figure out why it won't start. I've redone the timing, the ignition timing that is. I've rechecked the valve clearances and one of the valves was a little tight, but the issue turns out to be one of compression. So I'm not getting compression on this cylinder. You can hear it coming back through the inlet valve, I believe. So the valves are right, the timing is correct, top dead center is correct. There's something wrong on this side. This side here, you can definitely feel the compression. If you put your finger over the plug hole, it's really obvious. This side, there's nothing. So that means take all that apart again, which now means draining all the oil and all of the water out. The water, which I only just filled up today. But the only thing I can think of is a valve isn't sealing, maybe. I think that would be the only thing. I'm sure the rings and the pistons are all good. Yeah, I think I basically have to take that cylinder block off again. Everything's apart, and the first thing I notice is this gasket, unless I've got it upside down, I don't know if they can go upside down, is fouling the valve. So I've bunged a piece of tube in the inlet. It's not super tight, but it's good enough that I can blow air into this end and I can hear it leaking out around the valve. So that's definitely my problem. The valve's not sealing. Is it caught up on this gasket? So I need to lift that up and see, because that would explain it. That would explain why I'm not getting any compression that side if that valve isn't closing fully. Yeah, it turned out that was the problem. So I had to close the valve, open the valve rather, to be able to lift the gasket out of the way. Luckily you can actually do that by hand. I can just do it. And now with the gasket out of the way, if I blow air through this tube, it is sealing. So I wonder, are they handed? Are they... So this should clear. It's a bit awkward trying to get them to go down straight. So I wonder if that means, yeah, see, it clears better that way around. I do have more gaskets. I think they're in my little lab. I should go and check and see if they're actually marked top and bottom. These haven't been run. They have had some water in them. So I should be able to put this back together. Yeah, you can see where the gasket there was holding the valve up. I might swap this for one of the others. I got two sets. So I'm going to go find the other gasket and see if that's better. That might be okay to reuse, but I don't think I want to risk it. These head gaskets, they're not too expensive from the spares, I think. So it's worth fitting a proper one. I'll have to reset that valve timing on that one, which is really annoying because that is the hardest one to adjust. It's so close to the side of the crankcase. It's very hard to actually get the tools in there to adjust it. Yeah, this will explain why I haven't been able to get it to run very well, or at all really. I've just had it pop a couple of times, which makes me think maybe those original coils were fine and it would work with those, but I don't think I'm going to bother putting those back. I do have them all still. I could actually put it all back to how it was and see if it works. I do have 6 volt and 12 volt batteries now, but I suspect it's probably worth replacing the coils with known good ones and just leave it like that. But I'm going to go find my other gasket. So this is my new gasket. I don't want to reuse this one because there's actually a metal sandwich in there and that edge has now been crushed a little bit. So I don't want to have like a sharp point in the combustion chamber. So like I say, these are pretty cheap, but looking at them, they do go one way up. If you fit it the other way, the same thing happens. So these must be slightly non-symmetrical, which is interesting. So I obviously wasn't paying enough attention when I reassembled it. I didn't notice that that was the problem. But I think now I should be able to put this all back together, which is a bit of a pain in the neck, and we should be good. So I'm going to do that now. Hopefully it won't take too long. It's all back together. Definitely have compression both sides now, which is good. And I have actually made it run on the starter fluid. It doesn't run for long, but it at least runs a few times and I know it's going to work. The only problem now is I haven't been able to get it to run on the carburetor. I think I got it to cough once, but I've said that before. There's only really 2 adjustments on this. There's this one here which sets the height of the slide inside the body. It says to set it to 68 drill bit. The manual actually looks wrong. It says 15-30 seconds, which is way too big. I think they mean 5-30 seconds. So I need to play with that. I had that way too low, so it wasn't actually lifting the slide at all, so it was completely blocking the passage. The other adjustment is this one, which I think is the pilot screw, and I haven't found what you should set that to yet. It doesn't really say in the book what a good initial setting is, so I've got it, I think, 2 turns backed out. But obviously this is going to take a little bit more playing with. But oil's back in it, water's back in it, ignition is working. It should be pretty close now, but I have to go in for the night, and I'm in town tomorrow, so I won't be able to do anything tomorrow night. I've made sure I've disconnected the battery. It doesn't seem to be leaking. We'll see when I come out in a couple of days and see if there's a puddle of oil or water underneath it. But I think it's getting pretty close now to actually running, if I can sort that carburetor out. Carb's leaking a bit as well, so I think I need to maybe go through it and replace some of the seals or something. But definitely hearing it fire was good. I would show that, but it's a bit hard to do it with one hand, and I can't be bothered setting up this on a tripod or a stand at the moment. We'll wait until it runs properly, I think. The only difficulty I had putting it together is I did lose a spring washer, which had me very worried for a moment in case it had gone into the oil that I'd drained out or into the engine. I actually ended up putting the oil back in with a funnel with a sieve on it to catch anything. It wasn't in there. I found it underneath the stand eventually, so that was good. That was not lost inside anything, so that's good. Definitely getting closer. Finally, I've had some success getting this to run. There were a couple of things. I think I explained about the loss of compression with the head gasket. I have looked at those, and I do think they are handed effectively. There is an up and a down, because looking at some of my old gaskets, I see the same thing. I just haven't seen that mentioned anywhere. I probably just missed it. It probably is written down somewhere, but that's something I need to be careful of in the future. And I was able to get it to start on the Start You Bastard, the starter fluid, without the carburetor. So I knew the ignition was correct, or close enough, and the coils are working, the battery's working, all of that was good, and my compression was good on both cylinders. Of course, on that stuff it'll only run for a few cycles and then stop. So I had another look at the carburetor. I discovered there's a rubber seal that goes between the inlet stub and the carb. I was missing that. So I did find something suitable I can use temporarily, and only temporarily because they're not plastic proof, because they're actually from a plumbing washer kit. I'll need to get a suitable O-ring or a suitable rubber seal that's not going to swell up in petrol. That's been sitting in petrol all day, and that's what's happened to it. But that'll do just while I get it running. I took the carb apart again, re-cleaned all the jets. I think the pilot jet may have been a little bit blocked, so I made sure those were all clear. And then I realized I'm probably not going to be able to get it to start without the actual throttle on it, because you need to open the throttle a little bit to get it to start. And so I've pulled the throttle mechanism off the bike. Obviously it's lost one of the screws, because that's been replaced with an Allen head screw, which won't be quite right. So pretty sure I've got some BA screws I can cut down to make another set screw. But the throttle has a little adjuster on it, and that sets kind of like tension, so you can crack open the throttle and leave it in that position. It won't spring back. And that turned out to be the trick. So I've run this a couple of times now. If I crack the throttle, a bit hard with one hand. Let's put the camera down. camera can see. Here we go. So if I open the throttle a little bit, hook up the ignition, fuel is in this pipe. Actually, I have run out of fuel, so let's top that up. It's not going to run for very long just on this hose full of fuel and what's in the float bowl, but it's enough for me to be sure it's going to work. Make sure it's not in gear. Battery back on. Let's check this. Pretty good. That's running. You can see how fast the fuel goes down, so that's going to stop. The oil pressure, the gauge is pegged, so it's over 40 psi. I need a higher gauge to see exactly what it is. I think I'm leaking fuel, but it is running. So I think I can call that a success. The carb is leaking from underneath. Again, I lost the little fiber washer because it was broken. So it was actually crushed. So when I took it apart, the fiber washer broke apart, but I found another suitable one, but I need to check this all for leaks. It is kicking back a little bit when you start it. So I do think maybe I need to retard the timing a little bit, because I don't think they should do that. So I might adjust that, because I don't really want to break my hand. And obviously I haven't tuned the carb. The initial setting for this pilot jet screw is 1.5 turns, but this is warmed up pretty quickly. The exhaust isn't too hot. I don't have the clamps on the muffler. That gets pretty warm as well. So obviously there's lots of tuning and stuff to be done. Yeah, it's definitely leaking out the bottom of the carb. You need the proper washer in there, the seal. But it's not pouring. What's this? I think that's petrol. It's not pouring oil out. They're warm, but not too hot. I haven't tried the gears. I think I want something a little more solid than just a couple of axle stands holding the rear axle up. I need to come up with something better there, because I don't want to risk those falling off and this taking off. But that's good. I'm sure the gearbox and the clutch work. I have tested those manually, so I think they'll be okay. It's good enough now to know that the engine runs, and I can start working on the front half of the body and get that cleaned up and start getting it back together. The ignition system on these is interesting. I've been reading up on that, and what I do there depends on the state of this Miller switch. So that'll need taking apart and a really good clean. The way it actually works is underneath the cover there for the ignition, there's 3 coils and there's magnets in the flywheel, and the switch is set up so that in the position where just the ignition is on, not the lights, only one coil is feeding to the battery. The coil puts out AC, of course, so there is a rectifier in there, which is what that thing is. So that's an old school rectifier, and you can actually replace those these days with a little bridge rectifier. What that does is it converts the AC into DC for the bike. That helps charge up your battery. When you turn the switch to a position where the lights are on, it switches in the other two coils. So the way it works is there are 3 coils, 2 are wired in parallel all the time and 1 is wired by itself. So ignition only, just 1 coil. When you switch in the lights, it switches in the other 2. So you've got all 3 coils. One common modification people do on these, and I may do it just because it really helps with saving the battery, not overcooking the battery. These are basically balanced systems. So the rectifier converts AC to DC, but it doesn't regulate the voltage at all. The battery kind of regulates its own voltage. And the problem is, if you're not feeding the battery the correct sort of voltage and current that it needs, it'll boil it. And these are basically set up so that it's all supposed to be kind of in balance, and it'll be in balance at a particular speed. I think they're set for like 30 miles per hour, something like that. But what you can do is you can fit a modern, what's called a rectifier regulator, and that actually has the rectifier and a voltage regulator all in a self-contained little unit. They're dirt cheap, like a few dollars from China sort of thing. There's not much to them, so they should be pretty reliable. There isn't a lot of strain on these, but what you do is you fit one of those instead of that, and that will keep the voltage and current in check no matter what the bike is doing, what the engine is doing, and it'll make sure your battery doesn't fry. So I think what I will do is fit one of those. When you use those, you basically wire all 3 coils in together. So you've always got all 3 coils. You bridge, I believe it's these 2. So you've always got the full output, but the regulator rectifier makes sure it's not too much. That's all easily doable and all hideable, so everything will look original, and you can always put it back to original, but it's just going to mean the battery isn't going to get fried. So I think I'll do that. I've got a couple of those on order, and it vastly simplifies the wiring, because then you don't have all of that AC wiring having to go up to that switch. You can just feed the DC straight to it, I believe. The switch is kind of complicated. So this has, I think it's 6 different positions. One of them is kind of an emergency start position. So if your battery is completely flat, supposedly you can start it in that position, because it'll switch in the coils, and once the coils are running, once the engine is running, it should generate enough voltage to get you the spark, and then it fires itself up. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. Obviously it's going to take tuning and figuring out how much throttle you have to crack it open to get it to run, and I need to go through and check all the seals on the carb, obviously. I need to put the clamps on the exhaust, which hopefully I can do just by, I should just be able to, oh no, actually that might be tricky. I might have to take those pipes off. Completely forgot about putting them on when I did it. And yeah, I think if I can rig up a decent stand for the rear wheel to make sure that never hits the ground, and figure out a way to actuate the clutch, I could probably do a test run through the gears. I need to get a higher pressure gauge, which I've got, because I want to see what the oil pressure actually is. There's an adjuster here, but there's enough. There's probably more than enough at the moment, but that's good, because you know having oil there is much better than not having any oil pressure, which would be terrible. And I'm going to go look up what the story is on this kicking back, because I'm pretty sure it shouldn't do that, but I suspect all that means is my ignition is a little bit too far forward, and the pulling it on the handle, maybe I'm just pulling it too fast and it's giving it a bit of advance. They should be pretty easy to start, apparently. But yeah, it's going to run, which is cool. I don't know how long it'll keep running for, but one thing at a time. It did fit a slightly different gauge, goes up to 75 psi, but this one shows around 45 psi of oil, which is probably not too far off. I think I'll see if I can get the exhaust clamps on there, and like I say, I'm going to go and look up what the story is with it kicking back. Don't think it should do that at all, so maybe my timing is too far advanced. The reason for the kickback became obvious. My advance unit is sticking, and I've probably got that middle bolt done up a little bit too tight. Apparently that's what will cause that. So after I'd run it, apparently if that's too tight, that can jam. So I need to look at that. I did clean all of that before I put it back together. The other thing I looked at was the exhaust clamps. What a pain in the neck those are. So I had to undo the exhaust to get these on because they slide over the pipe. And getting to this one is a real pain in the neck because the oil filter's in the way. I finally got that one on. The other side is pretty easy to get to. And I got the clamp on, put the exhaust back on, and then realized the clamp was down this side and I couldn't slide it past the sump. So undid it again, got it past the sump, and then I realized these are too small to fit around the muffler. They just don't fit at all. And also that's meant to take a 1/4 inch bolt, and that won't fit through the gap. Even a 6mm won't fit through the gap. So these are just completely wrong in every dimension as far as I can tell. So I just ripped them off with pliers. I wasn't going to undo it all again, and I'll just get some different clamps to use on there. But this now does start pretty easily when the advanced retard is working. Let's see. This tube is the breather for the crankcase, and you get a surprising amount of air going backwards and forwards in there, because if you think the pistons are going in and out, it means the space between them is opening and closing, so you get a lot of air motion in there. So I just put this piece of pipe on there for now. I'll get a piece of rubber hose to go to that. I think this is meant to go back to the front somewhere on some of the bikes. It's out of fuel. There we go. I heard them spring back that time, so I need to just play with the tension on that bolt just to make sure it's correct. Probably need a little piece of hose on the overflow as well. You can see the radiator's blowing a bubble there. I don't want that squirting out straight onto the ignition. Let's see what sort of hose do I have here. I've got all sorts of bits and pieces. And a little piece of that will do it, probably, just to drain it away. I've got a whole box of clamps. Of course, I don't have two the same that are the right size for the exhaust. Figured out what was wrong with the advanced retard system. Somebody had fitted a split spring type washer under the bolt, and that always looked wrong to me because these bikes seem to use more star type, shake proof type washers rather than the sort of flat washer with a split in it. I looked in the parts book, and yes, there's just meant to be a flat washer there, so that's what I put. And I just nipped up the bolt. I don't think it'll come undone. If it looks like it will, I'll put a little bit of blue Loctite on it. and the fuel leak turned out to be the float bowl gasket. I think the cover is slightly warped, so I laser cut a thicker gasket. I think it's 0.8mm thick, and used a little bit more Hylamar, and I've done that up, and there's still a little bit of a weep there, I think, but it's not so bad, so that'll need a little bit of a look at some point, but it's not pouring fuel out now. And this should now no, everything's connected. Oh, I haven't given it. You have to crack open the throttle just a little bit. Probably there's a slight exhaust leak there. Probably one on the other side. Just a little bit. There's no leaks. It's definitely getting hot because I've already burnt myself on the exhaust once. These are getting warm. Not sure if it'll show up on camera, but you can see the advanced mechanism working. So if I disconnect the battery and it stops. So I'm really pleased with how that's running now. I'm going to put a little bit of fuel in this and I'll mark the hose. I'm about to go inside for the evening and I'll see if it's leaked overnight. I'll put the front cover back on as well and call that good.